So I would like to welcome on stage Manuel Almeida Vergara, the Communications Director of Fashion Council Germany, together with his guests to dive a little bit deeper in this conversation.
And I'm very happy to host the talk on visibility, cutting through the noise. Today, I'm Manuel Almeida Vergara. I'm the Communications Director of Fashion Council Germany. And we want to talk a little bit on how brands gain attention today through sharp storytelling, strategic content, and effective PR. I have three guests who have a lot to say about it, I guess. Next to me is Alex Allcott. I'm going to briefly introduce. Alex gained experience in several leading roles in advertising at the renowned creative agency Wieden & Kennedy, for example, and at the fashion platform Thread. Since 2021, she has been brand director for eBay UK and Germany, focusing on brand storytelling, culture, and relevance in a fast-changing retail landscape. Happy to have you here. Next to Alex, we have Mirjam Schuele. Mirjam has worked in marketing and advertising for a range of global brands, including Tommy Hilfiger. She joined Karl Lagerfeld in 2011 and has been Senior Vice President Marketing since 2021 there, leading global brand strategy and communication for the iconic fashion house. And last but certainly not least, we have Silke Bolms. Silke co-founded the Berlin-based communication agency Silk Relations, together with her business partner Kerstin Geffert, who I've seen here as well in 2005. Since then, Silk Relations has worked with a range of fashion and lifestyle brands, big fashion and lifestyle brands. I think the first one was Nike, which is kind of a big one for the first one, including Levi's as well, Veja, WePlay, Birkenstock, and Marshall headphones. Yeah. Happy to have you all here. Well, storytelling. Storytelling to me seems like a word that I have heard a lot in the fashion industry in the past couple of years. And preparing this talk, I was wondering what actually has changed in the past years. So this topic has become so important that brands are putting more effort and more money into sharp storytelling when it comes to their products. Maybe, Silke, you want to answer us?
Should I start?
You can.
I mean, what mainly changed is like the different fragmented target audience group, right? Like back in the days, you had only one target group that you had to announce or to communicate to. And now in these days, you have like this different kinds, like stylists, talents, creatives, influencers, press journalists, like all different target audiences that we have to communicate with. And every one of these groups need their content in their way, more or less. So you have to work with the material that you have, with the message that you have, but you have to work on the different formats. And this makes it a little bit, not really complicated, but time investment here to like nail down the message for these different kind of target groups. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to build on that, I think storytelling has always been important because I think it is the best way to emotionally engage with people. We remember stories much more than we remember facts, for example, and we remember how people make us feel much more than we remember what they've necessarily said to us. But I think, as Silke said, because of how fragmented the media landscape is, how we tell those stories has changed. So we were in our catch-up last week talking about how the days of making a 60-second TV ad are behind us and we can't just project and broadcast what we're saying. And so kind of storytelling is much more participatory and you have less control over it, which means that you have to sort of have a narrative, but then send it out into the world and see how that narrative takes shape and form and you have less control over it, which is an interesting dynamic for a brand.
Yeah, and I think if we think back like 15 years, it was about that 60-second ad, about also that perfect picture that brands used to be putting out, highly retouched, nothing real about it. And now the consumer really expects like some authentic content from the brand. They don't want to just have this perfection, which also now with AI, like everybody can have this perfection at a fingertip. It's much more about this authentic story and bringing more to the table than just the perfect image.
has it become harder also to get attention just given the sheer amount of brands and products that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think choice is infinite, and you can also access that choice from your pocket and your phone, I guess, day in, day out. And so trying to make sure that you can cut through that noise so people are more inclined to choose you through the emotional connection that you might have and the experiences you create with that consumer definitely helps, because we are kind of constantly in market, I guess, looking at, fashion choices, but there is so much, too much choice, and so we need to find very easy ways of making those decisions. And I think emotional connection helps with that.
Super important. But how do you do this emotional connection? And this is the next topic we might talk about. It's like every brand has like messages over messages, and there are so many brands, and they're sending out the messages through this different screens, through AI, through these different realities, so that everybody is overwhelmed with all these messages. And I think the emotional part, or the way how to transform your vision and your creativity to this target group, sometimes needs a quieter place, with all this noise coming out everywhere. You just have to sit down sometimes and to rethink your message and make another connection, which can be an experience, which can be other senses, which is not only a screen where you can't see which reality is the one that is now important. But like, as we saw in the Gemälde Galerie, like you have this handcrafted thing again, like 300 hours getting in one garment, but you have to touch it. You can't only read about it. You have to see it. You have to do like events or press trips or whatever to get other senses involved in the whole storytelling process. I think this is super important. And there's also a trend going back to this, right? Like offline clubs, like where you put away your phone totally. And this AI thing also at the moment is going a little bit more in an inside dialogue with you and the I, but not with the target group. So there's a change here that I can really feel.
And then to jump on that, I think it's also really about knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Who are you as a brand, as a person, as an emerging designer, and what is the story you want to tell? A lot of times we think, we need ideas, more ideas, great ideas, new stories. And that's actually where then it tends to go wrong, because it's not about having thousands of amazing ideas. It's about having one core message and then finding creative ways to bring this message to your audience in an authentic and emotional way and sticking with it. Because we get bored of our own stories. We're like, oh my God, I've told the story like 5,000 times. But the consumer they still haven't heard it. So I think a lot of times we kill our own reach by inventing the wheel again, whereas just sticking with one clear message and innovating with that is a much stronger way to reach your audience.
How do you balance that, though? That what you just describes, the consistency and the need for surprise also in storytelling?
That's the big balancing act that we need to take. And there, again, it's like, what is the core message, the core story? And then reinvent within that little square, bring in like maybe new technologies, collaborate with someone that can help you amplify that core message. Find different angles to the same message as opposed to starting to go out of the box and doing all kind of things. For us, I mean, Karl Lagerfeld, Karl is always the foundation of everything we do. Everything comes back to this, comes back to who he was, his curiosity, his courage, his creativity, and how can we then bring that message in like different ways with technology, innovation, artists. We work a lot with artists, letting them reinterpret the Karl Lagerfeld message, and that's a really beautiful way to do it.
Yeah.
I've been, for you, Alex, working for a major big company like eBay, have collaborations, as Mirjam just suggested. Have they been very important to you in the last couple of years?
Yes. So I think the benefit of collaborations is they make things surprising again, and they place you in a position where rather than potentially being adjacent to culture, you're right directly in it. And so I think particularly in the fashion space, we've had a lot of success with collaborations and partnerships over the last few years. In the UK, we were the first pre-loved fashion sponsor of Love Island, and Love Island is still the most popular TV property for Gen Z and millennials in the UK, and I know it has global impact as well. And it was very heavily associated with fast fashion. By flipping that narrative on its head, we really disrupted the story and got people talking to us. And we've learned from that behavior that finding different ways of introducing your narrative in surprising ways through partners really helps. So in Germany, we were partners with Disney Plus's Call My Agent Berlin, where we dressed the stars and we were integrated naturally into the narrative. And we're very excited that we've just announced that we're going to be partnering with Germany's Next Top Model. And we are the first sort of pre-loved fashion brand to enter into those conversations as well. So I think partnerships are very, very powerful tools to allow you to kind of amplify your message and create a kind of symbiotic benefit for both brands. They're harder to do because you're coming together and they require a lot of work and patience and collaboration. But when they sort of work, they work really well and they're worth the investment.
Maybe just to jump on that, because I love how you are breaking the rules with the Love Island collaboration. And I think that's also something to keep in mind with Karl Lagerfeld. For example, over 20 years ago, he was the first designer to collaborate with H&M, which today is like totally normal. But 20 years ago, people were like appalled. They were like shocked. They were like, oh my God, he's losing his mind. How could you ever, like, he's the designer of Chanel. Why would you, let's say, collaborate with someone like H&M? And then he did it. People were sleeping in front of the store. It was sold out, and it completely changed the narrative. It also gave him his like rock star status in a way. And we also need to be brave in certain ways. I think how you got into Love Island, really sort of the plot twist.
Yeah.
That's also when you grab people's attention because they're like, wait, what? What are they doing?
Yeah. And it's finding the, and I think with partnerships, you have to just try. And some will work and some won't.
Yeah.
But I think having that ambition is really
you have
critical.
to stick to it. I mean, I also hear many clients saying, no, we don't do another collaboration or collaboration, it's old. Why should we do a collaboration? But it's not about inventing new tools. It's what you said, like finding the right partner and having a surprisingly story to telling with this collaboration. There's nothing wrong with collaborations. You just have to have the right people for it.
And has this, as you described, breaking the rules, doing something unexpected, has that become more important? Is it more important to do something that is really super unexpected?
I mean, I think it depends on your brand and ultimately understanding what your brand is about. And eBay is the home of passion and discovery. And we've made this manifest in our kind of, I guess, tagline of things people love. We are the place that you find things that matter. And so within the realms or this square, as Mirjam was talking about, absolutely, I think finding ways of being disruptive and showing up makes sense. But I don't think brands should do it for the sake of it. If it is in your brand DNA, then, go wild. But I think making sure that it feels authentic and feels true to who you are as a brand is equally as critical, because otherwise people will scratch below the surface and realize that what you're doing is a stunt. And I think you need to make sure that what you're doing makes sense to the kind of core of your business and brand as well.
Yeah.
The example you talked about a couple of sentences ago, the Love Island example, as you said already, is something that speaks to Gen Z especially. Also, Germany's Next Top Model in Germany is something that mostly younger people watch. eBay, though, is a big brand that has to speak to people of all ages, of all areas in the world, of all backgrounds. How do you find ways to not only do little activations that speak to certain parts of these audiences, but to maybe sometimes find something that speaks to all of them?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a challenge to reconcile the car enthusiast with the fashion lover. But I think the thing that underpins everything we do is, I guess, enthusiasm. Like, we are the home of passions, and no matter what that passion is, I think people recognize other people who are equally as passionate about that. So we have a kind of brand promise, which is enabling the world's largest community of enthusiasts to do more of what we love, what they love, and that sort of is the connective tissue that sort of brings everything together. And our most recent campaign is about telling eBay stories. So that story might be about finding your authenticated handbag at half the price, or it might be about finding, that car exhaust for your specific vintage car. But all of it is about the stories that people want to tell and the value they get from eBay. And I think community and connecting community and passions is at the core of everything we do, which allows us to connect the dots between all the stories we're telling, but also gives us enough flex to be able to show up authentically to different communities, because we know we need to sort of meet them where they are. So, yeah.
This may be also, I'm guessing, that maybe AI can help to reach the right audience, to find out what these audience want, to create more relevant content. Silke, working with different brands and different strategies, do you have to say about that? How can AI help?
I mean, what I said before is AI is an enabler, right? Like, if you start, especially if you are a young fashion designer, AI can help you a lot with like finding not the way how you tell your story, because you have to feel your story and you have to have your vision and you have to have the story about your product. If this is all set in your mind, you can use AI perfectly for doing your marketing strategies, for like helping you writing the press release for these different target groups, to like get your content fit for this target group. But at the end, you have to have the vision and the creativity. This is something that AI can't do for you. So you have to put the emotion and the heart and the feelings into it, and have you as a designer, or you with your mission, vision, message, whatever, where the product is from, you have to tell the story with emotions to your target group. And in this way, the communications in AI don't work so good, in my opinion. So you can't use it to communicate to the target group, but it helps you a lot if you're getting prepared. It saves so much time. I've been doing a marketing presentation in like 10 minutes. It's so amazing.
Amazing.
I'm like, wow, I could do 10 a week. Yeah. This is super cool. But it can't show emotions. AI has no emotions, no feelings.
Do you have any
experience? Super good assistant.
At Karl Lagerfeld or at eBay with it?
I mean, definitely AI is a huge enabler. It can help, we use it a lot when we talk about translations, about personalization, also about it's kind of taking away all the busy work and enabling the teams to have more freedom to be creative. We see it, for example, sometimes we have to, new campaign, you have to create banners in like 1,200 sizes, 8 different languages. For those kind of deliverables, AI can really help to scale and to move fast. But the most important thing is AI is not a magic fix. It's really a tool. It's a tool you need to learn how to use, and the output can only be as good as the input. Yeah. Sometimes you see those like AI written emails or texts.
Terrible.
And then the brain just switches off. It's like, okay, ciao, I'm out. But sometimes, as Silke said, it can help you to bring a great idea into life much faster than what would have been possible 10 years ago. I always say it's a bit like a calculator. Like, you used to have like pen and paper to do your math, and then you got a calculator, and you still need to somehow understand how it works, but the calculator just gets you over the finish line much faster.
To build on that, I guess this idea of AI as an enabler is critical, and being a tech platform, it is allowing us to kind of progress on our ultimate brand vision of helping people find their passions in a much more meaningful way. So whether it's creating a process that reduces the time it takes to list, so that you're able to snap a picture and off it goes, and then we're able to sort of flood our platform with supply of unique objects, which we know is what our customers are looking for. Or it's about reducing the admin around your work, so you're able to think more creatively or strategically about how you can enable people to find more of what they love. So I think there are a myriad of different ways that AI is impacting our business, but I think being clear on what you stand for and what your strategy is critical, because otherwise it could potentially be distracting.
Mm-hmm.
You can also use it as an artistic element. That's what I saw lately, which I really appreciate. Like playing with AI, but in an artistic way. We did this, or Fila did the shooting with High Snobiety, where they only use AI, but they wanted everyone to see it as AI. So you see it immediately and you see it as an artistic element. And I really like this idea. Even an AI bot that can refracture graffiti on the wall and makes it as a clear writing. This could be like an element that you use in your messaging, in your creative messaging, if you use it as an artistic thing. This is really interesting.
Yeah, maybe there's one more thing to add, which we recently started doing, which is very interesting. It's about basically also for market research. You can create synthetic consumers. So you basically create an AI persona, and then you test your products, your claims against this persona, and use it to get like intel about potential consumer behavior, which is also an interesting way to use.
Yeah, we've been exploring that as well. And I think to Silke's point, I think AI allows you to visualize an idea much more successfully. So whether that's vibe coding or coming up with a creative idea through a prototype, it allows you to cut out a lot more steps and get closer to the sort of vision or the end state much more easily, which I think can help to kind of bring people on your journey and reduce the time it takes to come up with new ideas or new experiences.
Mm-hmm. Well, though the communication work has become much more digital, and we also see, and we already talked about that a little bit, kind of a back to offline movement, and events and direct communication gets more and more important to actually cut the noise. How though, and I'm asking this question because Berlin Fashion Week is obviously shaped by a lot of young brands, new talents. How can smaller brands that maybe don't have like a large scale budget to do a nice event, to do a press trip, how can they actually do something that is really cutting the noise, that is setting them apart?
Yeah, interesting question. It's really like, it's really about the personality that you have and the message that you want to tell, or the story behind your brand. And you should build up your community or your tribe, your family, your people around you, because you start with 5 people or 10 people or whatever, but you have maybe a cook or a creative person, and you try to install these community events in your atelier, in the studio, wherever. And from this community building thing, it goes bigger and bigger and bigger until you have a huge community that can help you to spread the story if you don't have the money to do big advertising and stuff. And then, of course, you have to find the old school toolbox where you find celebrities that wear your brand, or like finding right people who help you to open some doors to get a bigger stage and a bigger exposure. That would be actually my kind of way if you don't have a big budget.
Mm-hmm.
I also think conviction in the product or the experience you're building, because if you can get, a small group of people to experience that and feel like they want to evangelize about that, then that can help to create this network effect. So starting with being really confident in your product or the brand that you're building and being very clear about what that is will really help you to amplify more quickly through this effect that Silke's described. I think when you can feel it when there's a lack of clarity around direction, or there are things that aren't quite right about the product or experience, and that is just harder to amplify. Ideally, you just want to create something that just that sort of people can't not talk about, if that's possible.
Yeah. It also comes back exactly this clarity, like knowing exactly who you are and what the message you want to give, and then be curious, innovative, and brave in the way how you activate. Like what Silke was saying, find like collaborators, could be stores, could be celebrities, could be whatever, but don't think too much in the box. Think in terms of the box, in terms of who you are and what you want to say, but then be brave with who you partner and what platforms you use to really leverage your reach.
Is it maybe also important to not overthink stuff? Because and this is something that I see in collection texts a lot. I read the text and I'm thinking, okay, this is one part of a story too much. This is getting in a direction. It was AI.
I was going to say, who's written it?
Important sometimes to keep it simple and to not tell too much of a story even?
Yeah, a clear single story helps a lot. And the connection with your heart. You can't just put out empty words. You have to really feel it and you have to spread this. And if there are only empty words, people will recognize that. If it's not authentic, they will recognize, and then they don't go with this brand. Especially in these days, they need the personal connection. They need to feel home in your atelier and want to spend time with you as a person. And then,
yeah.
sorry.
I think the last data I got from Meta is that people look at your videos 1.2 seconds before they swipe. So that comes back to sort of the attention span and not having a too complicated story. Because if it's too complicated, you will definitely not reach your consumer. It needs to be very clear, very on point, and you need to get to that point like quickly.
Has there been a story, a brand story that you that you have seen in the past couple of years, maybe that has stuck with you, where you say, okay, this is exactly what a good and effective brand story might be?
Just do it. Since 30 years it works. They never changed it. Why should they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of research that's come out recently about the power of consistency when it comes to creativity. And actually research about kind of brands who haven't changed creative agencies tend to have more effective communications because they just don't change their campaigns as regularly. So I think to Silke's point, actually it is often the kind of bigger brands that might have had a singular point of view and have repeated that in various different permutations for years and years and years that come to mind when you ask questions like this. So I think it's sort of really critical that a brand kind of stays true to its single point of view.
But is there also maybe sometimes, or how can you maybe also describe the point where it's enough, where they have to maybe rethink a story if it doesn't really get through? Is there some advice that you could give on that?
Well, I think it's thinking about how your story sort of, I guess, changes with the times. So eBay has recently launched our live commerce experience. And that ultimately feels like sort of the core of what makes eBay eBay. We were originally an auction platform where we were here sort of bringing communities together, but actually we have sort of the media landscape has evolved and we see people much preferring these more tangible live shopping experiences. So I'd say the story hasn't changed, but the context has, and we're modernizing to make sure that we're showing up in that context. So I think that's a good example of sort of sticking to your singular narrative, but recognizing that you need to reinvent it. So we needed to create a new product experience that served a new generation of shoppers who want a much more tangible, real-time, interactive experience. But that's ultimately what kind of is at the core of what makes eBay eBay and what we were founded on 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's not about changing your story. It's about changing the way you tell the story and innovating within and finding different angles. If you think of Karl Lagerfeld, he was the biggest icon of fashion and the most famous by far. And we today are talking to different audiences. Some audiences that grew up being like really aware of Karl Lagerfeld, the icon, and who he is, but then talking to like new generations that maybe have never heard of Karl Lagerfeld. They don't know him. They don't know what he is standing for. And how do you bridge kind of that gap? How do you keep Karl's iconism alive with the new generation, and at the same time also talk to the generation that is so familiar?
I think working for a brand that has this household name, as you explained, it's like the most famous name in fashion for sure. Is that kind of convenient because you have always something to go back to, or is it sometimes also difficult because you want to tell a story, a certain story, or you want to do something and then you think about it and think, okay, this maybe is not really in the doesn't really fit the Karl Lagerfeld world. Is it helpful to have these restrictions, or is it sometimes also difficult?
I think it's a huge source of inspiration. It's a great honor to carry the legacy of such a big icon. And I mean, Karl was many things. He was very authentic. He kept on reinventing. But for me personally, what I loved the most about Karl is that he was endlessly curious. He was curious about everything, and he was always willing to learn new things. And it's really that we take forward, that is not a limiting factor. It's actually only opportunities about newness, new things. And I think curiosity in life and in business is one of the biggest and most valuable things to treasure and to foster.
There's so many stories about him. I mean, you can tell them in like 200 years.
Yeah. Well, we don't have 200 years left, but a couple of minutes. So maybe I'm asking you one last question that is also maybe something that the audience can take something out of with them. As I said, the whole Fashion Week is very much shaped by young brands. So another question of advice from you: what is like the one common mistake that brands are doing when it comes to trying to get attention? What is, and Silke, this is something that you, working with very different brands, can probably answer very well. What is like the one mistakes that brands come to your office with, and where you say, we're not going to do that?
Brands or young designers, that's a huge difference.
It is a huge difference.
It's a huge difference. The big brands, sometimes they want too much. Maybe the young designers also sometimes want too much. But it's like if they think that they are the only brand in the world, you know, then they have the main line, then they have the second line and the underline and the silver and the blue and the red and the things line. And you were like, hey, who should ever like see this, like will really understand, like one brand has already 10 different sub-brands. How should that work if there are like 100 other brands? So this minimalization to like a core collection and a core message is, in my opinion, is key, because the consumers or even the press people out there, they can't get all these stories coming from one brand. So it always comes back to this one simple message. And even that is so hard to get out. I mean, our client Veja, the French sneaker brand, they don't do any advertising, nothing. They just do storytelling and PR. And we're telling the same story since 16 years now, and still the people out there don't get it and come to me like, the V is for vegan, right? I said, no, it never was. So you still keep telling this one story. And what we do is like we bring the press into the Amazonian jungle to meet this rubber farmers and to really experience or let them see how the sneaker is produced, how the sustainable story of Veja comes to life. And this is what we do since 15 years. And And this is the only story that they tell. And we can tell this story again another 15 years because we have to bring all of the press to the jungle and we can always bring 5 of them. So you see, it's not always about the huge exposure and this huge numbers of getting outlets out there, but it's like really to have the time to tell the story for 5 days to one person. It helps a lot and it helps to build up the community. So sometimes it's better to do it slowly, more quiet and not so super bang. But it depends. It really depends. I mean, for big brands like eBay, of course it makes sense to go wild and big and crazy. So it's really hard. And the young designers, you guys don't have any money. So you have to be very creative with finding the right people. But sometimes it's not only that Lady Gaga wears your coat. Sometimes it's better to, I don't know, do pasta for the 20 nice friends of yours to build up the thing. So go with the flow.
Something you would like to?
I would say do less and do the things that you do better. Like be focused and then really invest in like the things that will actually move the needle for you. And be brave. Like don't be afraid to do things that are out of the box.
Yeah, I think advocacy is going to be a great thing for you as a small brand, and that advocacy can come in many guises, but just making sure that you have something that you feel clear about, passionate about, and that you can communicate, whether it's through a network of mums or through celebrities, because that will probably be the way that you're going to grow organically.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
This was about the stories that we had to tell. And I hope you have great Fashion Week left. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.